friends, I'm Rick, and this, well, I always want to do that because I just did a bunch of videos for my other channel. So, hey, I'm Rick, you're not. Little Missy's sitting over here in the corner. And recently, one of the things that cropped up that really kind of flipped my interest was when Biden did his State of the Union address. And he carte blanche just out of nowhere says, we're going to build a pier. You know, we're going to build a sea access to Gaza to help feed these starving people. And I thought, yeah, we're capable of that. That's well within our military and our government's ability to do. Whether or not the Israelis will tolerate it, you know. It sounds like Biden didn't give Netanyahu a damn choice. He just said, we're doing this and fuck you. I did some earlier videos on the Hamas thing and the deal with Israel. I still stand by when I said that Hamas deserves to die. That's all their whole existence is just to destroy the state of Israel and the Jews as a people. Their whole purpose of existence. So when they act the way they did and butchered and kidnapped as many people as they did, I had absolutely no qualms whatsoever of saying that they needed to die. And I believed that the Israelis were more than in their right to do this. Now I understood saying that. I understood that the situation on the ground there in Gaza before this bullshit all started was not great. A whole shitload of people in a small area. That's always a problem. And then you have very little access to the sea. This is also a problem for Gaza because it meant that Gaza was never going to be properly supported in the first place because you're landlocked. That makes a huge difference. So when the Israelis basically decided to carpet bomb the whole country, and that's what they're doing, they have gone beyond retribution. They have gone from the very initial assault. They went overboard on purpose. It's a shock and awe of the fear of the terror kind, being that they want to terrorize the Palestinians so badly that the survivors will never want to support another outfit like Hamas again. Well, that's great and dandy, except the lion's share of the hardcore Hamas fighters don't get a lick about any of that. They don't care about that. You're going to murder their people anyway, as far as they're concerned. They're already being murdered. They're already being marginalized and so on and so forth, which is true. The other side of that is the large contingent of the hardcore elements within outfits like Hamas are not from the region in the first place. They don't talk to them. They don't tell you that very much, but if you listen to them over the years, you can hear they explain this. It's not hard. That you've got these people from all over the world, specifically the Mediterranean or the Middle East and stuff, who have a hard-on for Americans in the first place, and Israelis definitely, and so they have no problems coming from everywhere else but Gaza to participate and to become leadership members of the Hamas. So it's they're the ones that those diehards that have no future, see no future, they're holding out. That said, the Israelis purposely, intentionally massacring these people is not helping their cause. Not by a minute. It's a damned if you do situation. But the Israelis and Israel, you know I'm not wrong here. You've stepped across the line by a minute and a half. You didn't just take a step over the line. Y'all took a run and leap over the line. And now you don't know how to get back to that line. And it's damn shameful that our politicians of all colors, Biden in the top, you're at the top of the buck stops with you, Biden. It's on you. But you're just the top of a very large pyramid. So we should have been calling out Israel much sooner about a lot of their excessive exuberance, if that's how you want to spin it. I don't give a shit. But for all intents purposes, it looks to me, and I'm not at that. What do I know about any of this crap? As an average American, moderately educated individual who reads and pays attention to some of the crap I read, that you just can't push the entire population of an area, several million strong, out of the area and not let them back in. That's what they want. They want them to all go to the Sinai, to basically go to Egypt, relocate to somebody else's country, so it's no longer a problem for the Israelis. Well, if I was the Egyptians, I would be livid. I wouldn't tolerate that. Where do you get off saying we have to support them? Traditionally speaking, they're from your region. The Palestine region had multiple tribes living there, and that's part of the damn problem. They can't get along or refuse to get along. They simply will not get along. It's willfully refusing to try. They don't have no intentions of getting along. So when our governments, Biden goes on and says, hey, we need to build a bridge because we're going to start airlifting supplies, emergency supplies in. Now, the problem with that is we've already seen the result of that. Just recently, 5 civilians on the ground were killed when one of those pallets came down on top of them. Because people are desperate when they're starving. There's images of people bum rushing the relief trucks that do get led across the border. And these people are they're not ransacking the trucks to steal the stuff for gain. They're stealing it to live, because it literally shows people ripping the bags open and stuffing, rice and other crap, dry product right out of the bag into their mouth. Somebody gets a bag of flour, they're eating handfuls of flour because they're that desperate. Well, that's wrong. That's wrong on more levels than I can promote. And it's no more right than anything Hamas did. Everything Hamas did was wrong. Well, now two wrongs do not make a right. It don't. It doesn't in America, it doesn't in fucking Israel, it doesn't anywhere. And it's our fault for not stepping up and putting a brake on it, saying enough's enough. Publicly denouncing this genocide that's in play. Because at some point they cross that border from Hamas has to die and punishing Hamas for their horrific acts to punishing the entire Palestinian population because it's just easier. Easier, or is it because they've always wanted to get rid of them? Well, great. So what are you going to do about the West Bank there, BB, what your fuck? I'm just asking, what are you going to do about the West Bank? It's far bigger. More people in it. You think this is going to end well? You think what happens when you literally got tens of thousands of people dying from starvation daily in the streets, and you start having bodies piling up, and those all them world news reports start showing all that crap there, Israel? How good is that going to make you look? You have moral high ground to a certain point. Well, you gave away your leadership, your military leadership threw away their moral high ground. You no longer have moral high ground. And I think as an American, as a tax-paying American, I think it's outrageous that we should send any kind of money to them, aside from aid to Palestinians. The Israelis as a people do not need our monetary aid. They don't. The Israelis as a military force are not defending themselves from an outside aggressor like Lebanon invading them or Egypt invading them. That's not what's going on here. No, they have an internal domestic problem, and they always have. They've always had a contingent of Palestinians living in Palestine from before the Europeans gave the Palestine to the Israelis after World War II. So you couldn't get rid of all those people who lived there when you showed up and said, hey, we're here now, kick rocks. And here you are, trying to do that now. Trying to find yet another way to push these people out of Israeli territory. So they're no longer an Israeli problem. Because as long as they live under your roof, they're your problem. So if you can eliminate them or make it so much uncomfortable that they want to relocate somewhere else, and that's what I feel that they've moved into this point. They've gone into this stage. So I find it fascinating. I always have, that the sheer ingenuity of humanity in general. Humans have been bridging gaps since the Stone Age. Since the first guy figured out, if I throw this log across this stream, I don't have to get my feet wet anymore. And they never looked back. So it's become more and more sophisticated over time, but it's not surprising. It's just like when you look at elements of in the Pacific, for example. We look at islands far out in the Pacific. And our military goes in and they build some pretty elaborate facilities on these atolls and other things out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. And they just didn't, how did they get it achieved? How did they get it done? Well, the engineering feats that we're capable of are astounding. That, the fact is that they could build entire floating cities out here in the ocean if they wanted to, it just staggers me. So that when the president says we're going to put in a pier and we're going to run supplies off that pier, how soon do you want it done, Mr. President? How soon? Now, part of me says this was pre-planned, that they were already in the planning stages, because it sounds like that, because the stuff that this sort of thing brings up that you learn that's interesting, starting with most of the shipping that you see here, these are actually the Army's Navy. So the Army actually has a Navy of its own, which is something I thought they had gotten away from. I thought they'd gotten rid of, but apparently they do have a limited ocean capability, mostly for this sort of stuff. And so when you look at these installations out in the middle of nowhere, well, how did they get all the heavy equipment there? How did they get all the concrete and all the other material there? Well, we flew them in. Well, sure, you can fly in initial stuff, but you have to build up. So if you want to bring in really heavy stuff, you need to build a honking damn airport that you can land some big honking planes on. Or you need to be able to beach some pretty big sized ships, and the ships have to have the ability to unload directly onto the beach, which, as the military, we have that capability. We've had that capability since before World War II. And to say that we didn't retain any is foolhardy at best. I understand we got 30 or 40 of these types of vehicle grade load LCMs. I know what the hell they call them. I'm thinking, trying to think of the name of what they call them. Landing craft. So the landing craft vehicle, landing craft, infantry. Apparently they had some heavy lift ships that you could basically, they lowered themselves down enough you could float 6 or 8 of these smaller landing craft on board, and then floated up. The landing craft are ocean capable, so it means they can travel. The problem is they're small, and it takes a much longer amount of time for them to cross, especially when they got a load on them. So if they're loaded, it takes them 9 or 10 knots an hour, kind of thing. So they're not or 9 or 10 knots an hour, or however that works out. They're not traveling very fast. It's going to take about 3 weeks from them to transit from the East Coast to off the coast of the Gaza. So about 3 weeks. Now they could have been there in about 2 weeks if we could have put them on a bigger ship and haul them over there. But apparently we got rid of those ships because we felt they weren't needed anymore. Okay, right. So all these other pontoons and bridge pieces, everything's component-wise, they're built like a giant Lego. So you drop these things out and you just link them together. The more of them you put together, the bigger the platform, the more stability and the more stable it gets. And then they would have technology and stuff. Reason I got really fascinated by this whole copy, because when I was in high school, one of my best book reports I ever wrote, in my opinion, I don't think my classmates or my teacher thought that way. I got a B for my teacher. His big complaint was it lasted too long. I wrote a book report, took damn near 3 days to give it. An hour-long class, almost 3 hours to do my book report. And it was on World War II, and mostly the logistics involved of the invasion of Normandy. So one of the things that interested me was how they were able to put together and overnight basically build several what they called mulberries. So several full-size ports were put together off the coast of Normandy in places that were not really suited for ports in the first place, and that including bringing bring in artificial barriers to drop down to create water barriers and sea barriers and crap like this. And then a couple of days after they got everything up and running, that big honking storm came through and wiped out most of them. I mean, they served a purpose for a very brief window, but there was quite an extensive undertaking. And I wondered, did they ever pursue that afterwards? And obviously they have. And so, like I said, so one of the easiest way to get heavy equipment supplies to a location is off of a boat. And if you have boats that can directly land on a beach, great. But unfortunately, when you're dealing with, and I picked the Pacific for a reason, there's so many coral reefs out there that most islands have barriers to them under the water that prevents most shipping from crossing over it without causing problems. Either problems to the ship or the barrier or the reef or both. And so to get around it, they had to learn how to build platforms and causeways and things like this. So this technology has been around, and they've been obviously practicing it for years. So I mean, I'm fascinated with this idea, and so like I said, the airlift of all the world's countries, perhaps America, China, and Russia, and in that order, have the massive enough lift capacity to literally save a nation. We could, if we absolutely had to, move 1 million tons worth of airdrop supplies a week easily. Easily. The staggering cost is prohibitive. Therein lies the crux. How much is human life worth? How much is human life worth? So part of me wants to say, well, the only we're trying to help out. That's the reason why the Democrats are pushing through with this. We're going to drop supplies and we're going to build this wharf. We're going to help supply these people. The Israelis we're going to do an end run around the Israelis and dare them to say something. So part of the challenge is doing this without putting boots on the ground. How do you do this level of stuff and not have somebody on the ground? So you're going to put U.S. military personnel or U.S. civilian personnel or U.S. contracted third-party personnel in harm's way. Now, if you're going to be a savvy politician, hiring a third world party, hiring somebody from somewhere else to do the ground aspect of this would probably be the smart move. So we get some civilians to meet us at the beach. We dock the first portions of these things, and then our soldiers and sailors never actually get off the barge. They never actually get off the barge, because then they can make the argument that we can make an argument back home that no American soldiers or sailors were, in Israel. Although when we make that comment, it's kind of yeah, okay, kind of bullshit thing, because when you talk about being in theater, well, theater isn't the beach. The theater includes a whole lot more than that. So by definition, the Navy is in theater by being off the coast of frickin' Israel. So by definition, they're in theater. And they're at risk. There's already a lot of risk going on in the area, in the region and stuff, because of all the once again, these third parties, these terrorist groups. They're flinging UAVs and fucking damn drones and damn rockets everywhere. So the attempt to trying to get at Israel or get at Israel supporting naval ship. So that said, it'll be an interesting scenario. I suspect that the question is we get it there in time, because there's talk about there's already going on about some kind of negotiations. But if we're talking the current Israeli government's leadership, I don't see this going anywhere. These talks can talk all they want, but for political standpoints, from the perspective of timing, this is a bad day. And it makes another additional sign of weakness That's something to keep in mind too. And I don't think that they talk about this much on the talk shows and stuff that I've seen so far, or at least not enough. Is that our foes? They're paying attention to this. They're paying attention to how we're stumbling over this funding for the Ukraine. So we're intentionally letting Ukraine dangle on a string, and if Ukraine fails, we take the lion's share of the fault for that. And we take that, and I mean we as an American population, because we voted for these ass clowns that are not funding these people. We, the American population, as a collective whole, not as individuals. I don't like a lot of shit that goes on. And there's a lot of things I wouldn't support if I had my way. And there's a lot of things that we do support that I understand the need to, but still question the if we should. Right? That's sad. I think that if we commit an ally or a friend in the way that we did initially with the Ukraine, it's reprehensible to midway through their crisis to just say, oh well, yeah, good luck. We gave you enough. We've helped you enough. You just keep wanting more. Yeah, they want to survive and they want to live. They want their damn country back. They want their country, period. And they don't want to be living under the frickin' Putin crime family bullshit. Right? Can't fault them for that. But whose fault is not helping them? That's us. And we committed to doing it first place. And that's bullshit. And the fact that it's so blatantly, obviously politically motivated makes it just worse. That's the horrible shit about some of this mega mindset that's going on in the Congress. You guys are your own worst enemies. You are screwing yourselves as much as everybody else. In the long run, I suspect that the quote Republican Party, the MAGA Party, is going to get handed a really, really nasty lose come November's elections. I expect that. If they don't and they gains, I give up. We got what's coming next. It's the truth, right? So, historically speaking, one of the most fascinating stories. Now, I don't know that there's any actual physical proof. There's a lot of artistical proof, such as paintings and drawings and artwork that suggests it. But whether or not they were actually perpetrated when they were there when it happened is another story. So when the Battle of Thermopylae is the one that's the most famously known, that's tied together with the Battle of the 300. So Leonidas and his 300 Spartans and the 8,000 Athenians that helped him for the first couple days, because they tend to blow that part off, because the 300 didn't want to sacrifice them. 300 elite Spartans held the gates of Thermopylae against the entire million-man Ottoman, not Ottoman, it wasn't Ottomans at that point, was it? Anyway, so I watched the movie. It's a great movie. I've read the book, a couple different books on the topic over the years, and it's fascinating stuff. One of the things that amongst, because that was a large campaign, and they only talk about, mostly focus about the Leonidas and the 300, but there was a massive naval battle that was fought off the coast in a horrible storm, if you go by what the movie says. But the historical books said there was a massive battle that was won by Athens' navy, which set the Turks behind, and then of course the 300 delayed their inevitable. They still won. Eventually they took. They captured the Hot Gates. They destroyed Leonidas and his force, and they marched on Athens and sacked it and burned it. And then, out of a fit of chagrin and shame, went back and rebuilt the city. So the fact was that the battle was pointless. It gave them time, but it wasn't a sufficient amount of time. It wasn't until after all this takes place and there was a second battle that the Athena and Spartan forces persevered, and so on and so forth. At least that's my understanding of it. But of that campaign, one of the unique things was the bridging. I want to say the Bosphorus. Now, I may be incorrect, but that very narrow strait of water that connects the Mediterranean to the Black Sea. And it's, where Constantinople is, or Istanbul, or whatever the hell it is. So this Byzantine era city is actually on two sides of this damn waterway, and the waterway is a couple miles. It's a number of miles across, so it's not it's not something easily to walk across. You're not going to walk across it. And the current's kind of treacherous through here. It has a tendency to rip back and forth. There's some riptides and some other issues that go on through this Bosphorus Pass. It's crucial to modern day shipping and getting bulk material in and out of the middle parts of Eastern Europe and that kind of crap. The back in the day though, old boys engineers and stuff figured out a way to bridge it. So they built a bridge. They used a bunch of old ships and lined up these ships from shore to shore and literally built a bridge across it. So they were able to march large quantities of men, animals, and supplies across the bridge that otherwise would have been all but impossible for them to have ferried that significantly large army across the damn Bosphorus in order to engage in the battles that they did. So this is just a grand example of this sort of thing having been going on for a long time, right? I mean, there was even some stories that Caesar at one time had pushed forward the idea of trying to bridge the frickin' English Channel in order to get a bigger bigger military force on England's shores instead of taking it by boat. It never panned out. There's much bigger, much wider expanse there to try to bridge. But meanwhile, the local stuff, every era, every major conflict of the world has had to have some kind of bridging equipment or some kind of expertise that allows people to build bridges. One of the things that set the Romans apart and what allowed the Roman Empire to exist and to be as successful as it did for as long as it did was their legendary engineering feats when it comes to logistics. The very road network that Rome is famous for, all roads lead to Rome, is not not a pithy saying. At the time was probably literal truth for a big chunk of Europe, that every road out there that connected to another road eventually ended up to Rome. So in the case of the Romans, they built the roads, and they built them damn well. They built them to last, and they used both their military, so when their legions were not off fighting, they were out building civic works. So they built the roads networks, and this included a lot of bridges. So the expertise to bridge and the knowledge to do so goes back thousands and thousands of years. It goes back to pre-biblical era. Now there's lots of evidence to it. So when I hear the military, the government, and the president says we're going to do this, I'm like, yeah, right. It's like when that crucial piece of that bridge fell across the river. It was the Mississippi River here not too long ago, and old boy said, "Oh no, we're going to have this bitch open in 2 weeks," and they did it. If you have enough will, we have the manpower, resources, and the know-how. It's just a matter of willpower, So the question is, at the end of the day, is what's the long-term sustainability of this project? If they do successfully get some kind of peace agreement set up, then this bridge would be, this pier would be no longer needed. Get them to open up more, they get the Israelis to reopen some of their access. That doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't change internal access problems. From what I understand, the Israeli military has sent such a number on Palestine as a whole that very little of the infrastructure inside's intact. So there's no intact bridges, there's no intact roads. Everything's blocked or damaged in a lot of ways. So just getting stuff to the shoreline, it may not be sufficient. How are they going to tackle the next phase of stuff, let alone do it without sending boots on the ground in there to achieve it? I don't know. not to mention security issues. So we put this big honking pier up. What's to stop 500,000 starving Palestinians from storming the beach and storming right out on these things until, and then what? How do you prevent that? How do you go from there? I guess one step at a time kind of thing. It's like the airlift stuff. We could literally airlift a million meals a damn day if we wanted to. We have the capacity, we have the technology, we have the manpower. The question is, do we have the will to do so? Because it costs a fucking shitload of money to do it. And what's the payback, right? In this case, Biden's doing this stuff to show a certain element within the American population that he is trying to do something to help the Palestinians. The problem is, old Joe, no offense, President, you're falling way short on this. This is something you should have put your foot down on 2 months ago. You should have flat out said, look, we drew the line at this. When I sat there and they watched them basically drop an artillery strike on 6 residential buildings because supposedly one terrorist lived in one of them. Hello? Really? How is making an entire another generation of desperate damn wannabe martyrs a good thing, Israel? I'm just asking. You think you're solving a problem, you're not this way. Unfortunately, there's no good solving these problems. This sort of stuff is a social problem that takes generations to fix itself. I'm not saying you can't make the effort or you don't make the effort. You have to make the effort. But the big buts come back around, right? So, awesome stuff. I love this crap. I hope to see it. They actually get it into action. I'd like to see them do some videos and stuff of showing it in action and being utilized. I mean, because it's a hell of an endeavor. Because they're going to use Cyprus to base the supply ships, and the supply ships are going to load in Cyprus, and then they're going to go. So they're going to be inspected. They're going to be loaded. They're going to shipped off to an offshore landing port, barge port, that the ships will then unload onto, and then the Army Navy crews will then reload them onto the next ship, who will then take it over to the pier and then unload it from the pier so it can be unloaded onto trucks and hauled off the pier. Now, I'm sure they have their reasons. And I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess that the pier part, or the platform part, has to be out further into deep water because of the deep water ships need access to it. I get that. Because one of the big problems with the Palestinian coast along that area, from what I understand, it's a big ass shelf. So it's shallow. Or a long running field. So it's shallow and it goes quite a ways. So it's damn near impossible to bring any kind of deep water shipping close enough to the beach without running it aground. So even the landing craft can only get so close to the beach before, they risk getting bogged down on the sand, on the ocean floor. So the idea being is they build it far enough out, then they have to relay. But it sure seems like an awful lot of extra steps along the way. Ideally, your platform out there, I guess they can't be too damn big. Otherwise, I'd say why stage shit at Cyprus? Why not stage shit at the damn platform? Just eliminate one of those steps and speed shit up. You do all your inspections and crap there, right? And that's what Israel's wanting to make sure that stuff that can't be utilized by Hamas. Well, that's a nifty, thorny problem unto itself, isn't it? Because the Hamas can use fuel, so can everybody that's starving and dying and the logistics people needed to fix that going on in Palestine right now. They need fuel too. They need clean water. They need access to medical supplies, food. All 4 of those are critical items that Hamas needs too. So Israel, how do you keep millions of Palestinians from starving to death on your watch while preventing Hamas from getting anything useful? Right? It's like I said, I hope to see this thing in action. I want to see American ingenuity at work. I want to remind the America itself, we remind ourselves what we're capable of doing if we want to. I mean, I'm of the opinion that they could extend this thing literally right out into deep water, and then just have these heavy ships show up, unload on the platform, and swap the crap out. I ain't saying it's perfect by any means. It ain't perfect. None of this is perfect. Perfect world, we wouldn't be having this conversation about any of this crap at all, right? Anyway, I'm Rick. We'll miss you over here. Hope you have yourself a great weekend, and I hope things get better over there. And as for the Palestinians and the Israelis and Ukrainians, thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers. America's got lots of thoughts and prayers for you. Shit.